21st of March, which is obviously being held at the Whittlesea Community Activity Centre here in Laurel Street, Whittlesea, and it is also being live streamed. I'm Lydia Wilson, Chair of Council, and I just wanted to say at the outset how lovely it is to be here in person without the requirement for masks, and we haven't had a public gallery for a very, very long time because we've obviously been live streaming our council meeting, so it's really terrific to see you all here this evening. I just also wanted to acknowledge the fact that we've had community consultation this evening on some really important themes, and again, thank you all for participating, whether it is in relation to our potential cat curfew, the Green Wedge Management Plan, waste management, a number of really important topical issues. I'm delighted to also introduce my colleague, Administrator Chris Eddy.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see you.
And you will note that we're one administrator short, so we've unfortunately had an apology from Ms Peter Duncan this evening as she is unwell. I'd now like to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Craig Lloyd, and ask that he in turn introduce council officers in attendance.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to introduce the Executive Manager of Governance and Strategy, Mr Frank Joyce.
Good evening, everyone.
Our Interim Director of Corporate and Shared Services, Ms Marilyn Kearney. And the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Debbie Wood. Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon this council to make informed and good decisions to benefit the people of the city of Whittlesea. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I'll now hand back to the Chair of Council, Ms Lydia Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Lloyd. On behalf of the City of Whittlesea, I recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country, and I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place. And I'd also like to personally pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Before we start the business of council this evening, there's just a couple of acknowledgements that I would like to make. Firstly, today, the 21st of March, is a special day, not just because we've got our community forum and the council meeting, but also because it's Harmony Day, and hence my very bright orange attire this evening. Harmony Day coincides with the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Harmony Day began in 1999 and it paved the way for Harmony Week and Cultural Diversity Week, which runs from the 19th to the 27th of March this year. This week is all about inclusiveness, respect and belonging for all Australians, regardless of cultural or linguistic background. This year's theme is Everyone Belongs, which we see as so fitting for the City of Whittlesea because we celebrate our diversity not just in Harmony Week, but every week through our commitment to Whittlesea being a place for all. You'd probably be familiar with some of the statistics for our city. We have 36% of our residents born overseas, compared to 28.3% across Victoria, and 44% speak a language other than English at home, which is nearly 20% higher than the state average of 25%. So we really acknowledge Harmony Day, Harmony Week, and as I said, Whittlesea being a place for all. Could I also just make a couple of other acknowledgements and our appreciation? Firstly to Whittlesea Rotary Club, who put on that wonderful sausage sizzle. We really thank them for all of their endeavours. To the vocal duo, the Gambin brothers, Jacob and Samuel, who are also Whittlesea locals and performed at our community carols. And also the coffee van and that wonderful fudge, Katrina Bryant, who I just learnt is a new resident of Whittlesea and has moved into the area recently. So we really acknowledge their presence here this evening and thank them for all of their endeavours and providing us such good food and entertainment. I note, as I mentioned earlier, that we have an apology this evening from Administrator Duncan. And I would also ask that if there's any declarations of conflict of interest. So, Administrator Eddy, if you've got a conflict of interest in relation to any item on the notice paper, and this also applies to myself, obviously, you may verbally disclose the type and nature of the interest now, but you must make a declaration immediately before consideration of the matter in question. Are there any items for which you have a conflict of interest to declare?
No, Chair.
I also have no items of conflict to declare. I seek a motion to confirm the minutes of the following preceding meeting, which is the scheduled meeting of Council held on the 21st of February 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy, and I'm obviously happy to second that item, and I will put the matter to a vote. All those in favour of confirming the minutes? Thank you. In relation to public question time, I note that we've already had one public question received for the council, for this council meeting, and if I could invite Erica Hawke to come forward in relation to her public question. If Ms Hawke would like to come up to the front.
Thank you, Chair. The Whittlesea Agricultural Society has a 163-year history of bringing people together and are a cornerstone in the Whittlesea community. Among other things, the major event organised by the Whittlesea Agricultural Society is the Whittlesea Show, held each November. The Whittlesea Agricultural Society is one of the oldest agricultural societies in Victoria. The Whittlesea Show is the most continuous two-day show in Victoria and the largest two-day event in the city of Whittlesea. Julie told me I could say that. The local economy benefits from the Whittlesea Show, with tens of thousands of visitors coming from within the city of Whittlesea and to the city of Whittlesea from across Victoria and interstate each year. This in turn supports local and small business and boosts local profit, development and infrastructure. The Whittlesea Show provides the major fundraising outlet for over 20 local community groups and more from further afield, as well as 100 schools who advertise and enter student work. With thousands of people flocking to the showgrounds each day, we rely on the valuable assistance of some 200 plus volunteers to bring our event together. Last year, with 2 years of no show due to COVID, we felt there was a need to unite as a community, so we decided to host a new event, the Whittlesea Community Christmas Tree Extravaganza. The administration building was a beautiful Christmas wonderland in the heart of the Whittlesea Township. This coming together of the community was a welcome opportunity to showcase the many community groups and businesses in Whittlesea, and the compliments flowed. My favourite being, this is better than the Maya windows. We had over 1,500 people view the display, and we look forward to hosting the event each year moving forward. The Whittlesea Agricultural Society is a volunteer-based community group, and the funds we raise from hosting events, including the show, enable us to continue our work year-round and support local community groups and local projects. Some past projects we have heavily supported include the Whittlesea Men's Shed and the Whittlesea Football Club rooms. We have several community groups who call the Whittlesea Agricultural Society home. The Whittlesea Horse and Pony Club and the Adult Riders, the Northern Model Aviation Group, the Whittlesea and Northern Districts Poultry Club and the Heritage Machinery Group all use our land for their community group purposes. The impact of no-show for the past 2 years has taken its toll in several areas, including finance. We are looking for ongoing support to assist us moving forward to cover the ever-increasing government compliance requirements that are impacting our finances in a negative way. We also seek support to take the pressure off of our wonderful volunteers, many of whom are ageing. I'm a volunteer. I'm the current president, and since August last year, I'm also filling the administration or secretary role as we don't have the funds to support this position. In my time as president, I will work to recruit new members and volunteers. I aim to create lasting partnerships, and I would love to get at least one show under my belt. Hopefully COVID can stay away. As well as increased funding, I would like to develop an ongoing partnership and extend the existing relationship between the City of Whittlesea and the Whittlesea Agricultural Society in the engagement and management of the Whittlesea Show. My question to you: can the City of Whittlesea please assist the Whittlesea to develop an ongoing partnership and extend the existing relationship between the City of Whittlesea and the Whittlesea Agricultural Society in the engagement and management of the Whittlesea Show? My question to you: can the City of Whittlesea please assist the Whittlesea Agricultural Society? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Hawke. You might like to perhaps just take a seat up at the front, and I'm going to ask Mr Lloyd if he'd like to provide a response.
Thank you, Chair, and good to see you again, Ms Hawke. The Whittlesea Agricultural Society has been running the Whittlesea Show for 161 years, as you mentioned, with thanks to dedicated and community efforts of the Ag Society and their network of amazing volunteers who together host the largest event in our municipality. Council appreciates the financial impacts the cancellation of the show in 2020 and 2021 had on the Society's finances, and Council also acknowledges the costs for the event infrastructure and compliance have also risen in the last few years, further impacting on the finances of the Agricultural Society. As you're aware, administrators and officers have met with the Society and your committee a number of times over the last 12 months. And I'm pleased to say that tonight, Council officers are recommending a proposed funding allocation for the Whittlesea Show of $20,000 in the proposed budget for 22-23, which is being considered by Council later tonight. We think this will support the Society as you plan for your 2022 show and navigate the post-pandemic operating requirements. This support will allow the Society to employ and pay for contractors to undertake some of the work previously delivered by volunteers and also support the running of the event. So we're really pleased with the work that the committee does and the Society does, and this is our first step in supporting you. There will also be an opportunity for the community to provide feedback on the draft budget before it's finalised, should Council adopt the draft budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ms Hawke, just on behalf of Council, I just want to formally acknowledge the enormous contribution we know that you all put in. We very much hope that the show does occur and obviously that we've got an ongoing partnership relationship with the Society. So thank you very much for all of your enormous contribution. And as Mr Lloyd indicated, the item that we will be considering later is the draft budget, which will then be placed on public exhibition for consultation, and you might wish to comment in relation to the draft budget in due course. So thank you again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, administrators, and thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just check whether there are any further public questions?
There were, but misunderstandings in how it all went, so maybe it has to roll forward to next year, whereby I had to have a question before 3:30 p.m. today. I was unaware of that. Basically, the blinking lights heading down Plenty Road into Whittlesea. Who knows? I have a foghorn leghorn voice. I might not need this.
We are able to accept the question as part of the community meeting.
Lovely.
Yes.
It's
So
not all for naught, my
no,
coming
exactly.
here.
So if you would like to
Sure,
ask,
I'm speaking on behalf. There's one. I thought he was
could we
meant to be there.
also just get your name?
Sure. Us three here. Jared, Peter, and Jacqueline
Thank you.
Marchant. we all reside in close proximity on Coombs Road, which we are, for those that don't know, on the fringe in every way, bordering 3 municipalities, Shire of Nillumbik, City of Whittlesea and Shire of Murrindindi. And we are the forgotten ones. We are aware of that. Our problem, and it is a problem, and it's ongoing, and it's kind of probably unavoidable, is roads. It is not so much that there are now speed signs. It's a dirt road, unsealed, has been since the beginning of time. And 50 k's is the considered speed. Really, at the end of the day, probably 35 to 40 is more intelligent. Since the fires, metallic cat's eye road markers, oh my God. I mean, I've sent emails and really, what's the point? We get London pea soup fogs, probably have one tomorrow morning. Where we live, we're on the highest point of the ridge nearly, and anyone visiting could end up in Di Naylor's lounge room quite easily because they are not where they ought to be, out the front of the appropriate colour of every driveway. And unfortunately, I haven't got out and used the wheel to measure it, but they're probably 50 metres apart when really 25. Oh, they're 100 you've measured. Okay, so they're miles away. And you're like, whoa, where am I? Even though I've lived up there forever and Peter probably longer, certainly longer. I've been a resident of Kinglake since 93, but Kinglake West, Upper Hume-Vale, City of Whittlesea since 07. So our concern is the dangerous nature of our road, combined with, and I do know Mark, who grades the road, and I do know Mark's restrictions in the quality of the grade. And so there's too much of a crown, chasms of gutters that are made deeper by waterfall, tyres, diffs, vibration on headlights. I mean, it's horrific. And with petrol the way it is and car maintenance, and sure, people have said, oh, well, you chose to live there. Yeah, but the road is not as good as it used to be. Yes, weather patterns have changed, as we are all aware, but we are here tonight to try and get an understanding of why it feels like we've been hung out to dry. I do know in Kinglake itself there's roads that never get looked at. Residents of Hawkes Road, you know, same dog, different leg, all singing the same tune. It was my understanding, and this might be of some contention and conjecture, that maybe approximating 30 years ago there was a federal grant for councils to be using on unsealed roads, and that's got to do with a council member knowing this. And the funds were diverted. So that was, you know, between 25 and 30 years ago. So it's been in the pipeline. I guess we want to know what measures will be, not can be, will be undertaken to... Cars are expensive, as we all know, and our cars, even though we drive responsibly, they are suffering in every way. Bushes and... flat tyres after every road grade. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Yes, please, Peter.
It's okay if I chat?
We've had 3.5 minutes. It's been 3.5 minutes.
Sorry, we have got some time restrictions associated with questions, but I think, given that I'm not sensing there's going to be a lot of additional questions, I think we'll give a bit of licence this evening.
Is that okay? Thank you very much.
If you would like
Thanks
to
for your time. My name's Peter
ask your
McKenna.
question.
Thank you. My name's Peter McKenna, resident of Coombs Road for over 22 years. I just want to know the council's stance on the dust. Now, excuse my tooth, I'm a proper Collingwood supporter. Just got it knocked out. So, as far as the dust, the clay dust, because every time it's graded, there's no material getting put on, as in crushed rock, stone. Okay, we're down to dust. That dust contains silica. Silica, as we know, can create silicosis. We know that. It's a potential risk these days. And after the fires, a lot of new families have come into this road. It's a very heavily used road now. And the dust coming across when people just come straight through. The dust, it's everywhere. And I can't see how that's healthy and how we should put up with that. What we're asking for is, please put at least 4 inches of compacted, like they're doing in Nillumbik Shire, on their dirt roads. It's not really acceptable these days to have a flow of dust, whether the wind's blowing north, that's my place, or south, that's the other side of the road. And it happens regularly or every day. It's just not getting the material it needs. So that's basically all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
If I could just add quickly, fence to fence, I was in the fires, fence line to the road, I believe, this is only my personal opinion, there should be no undergrowth. Mature trees, fine. But if that's your only way out, because the other end of Coombs Road is a fire track and you wouldn't get down there.
Thank you.
It's in terrible condition. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. So obviously there's a number of issues that you've raised this evening regarding the condition of the unsealed road, drainage, roadside vegetation, dust, and also you were talking about the federal government grant. There are a number of council officers in attendance this evening, and we've recorded the specific questions. I think I'm going to hand over to the CEO in a minute, but there might obviously be the need to take some of those questions on notice.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I will need to take them on notice, and I'm happy to commit to come out and visit you and have a look myself and bring our Director of Infrastructure and Environment with us. I just ask that you just register your details with Sam there, just so we can make contact with you, but certainly we'll come and see you within the next few weeks. Thanks very much. No worries.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could also just add, under our governance rules, any questions which are taken on notice, we will publish in the minutes. We'll also include the response to that. You'll receive a copy of that response once you've given Sam your details, and the response will also be captured in the minutes.
Thank you for coming along and asking a question. And as our CEO indicated, he'll be looking into the matter personally and happy to come out and meet you on site. Thank you. Are there any further questions this evening?
My name's Winston Attard, resident and ratepayer of Whittlesea Township for 40 years. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Whittlesea Cricket Club, just to speak about the pavilion itself. As nice as it is, they've kind of outgrown it. And with the Whittlesea Football Club, the juniors playing, they've got a little cubby house on the side there. It's an expanding area, lots of juniors coming into the area. It really needs to have another relook, you know. They've got a shared space area which is partitioned for home team and away team for the cricket club, or the home team uses the committee room out the back. It's just small, and this is the Whittlesea Cricket Club. It's not the Mernda Cricket Club, it's not the Bundoora Cricket Club or whatever. This is the Whittlesea Cricket Club. So if there's something along the lines that maybe you could have a look at, you know, and maybe a bigger shared space area with the junior football club as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, Mr. Lloyd, you might like to make a preliminary response.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will take it on notice, but I will just say that we are currently conducting a review of all of our sporting facilities at the moment. So our officers, if they haven't already, will be coming out to talk to you and inspecting the building and looking at how your club is growing. And I certainly know it's one of the growing clubs, so we'll certainly take that on board. But we'll take a commitment to come back to you in writing with a formal response. But that review will take some time. Obviously, there's quite a few business, community facilities and sports clubs to visit, so that will take a little bit of time, but we will get to you. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I note that we also have one petition this evening, and the petition is from 15 residents relating to a request to remove 5 mature paperbark trees in Palm Street, Thomastown. And I do need to note that the petitioner the lead petitioner indicated that they did not wish to come along to council to present their petition in person. So, Mr Lloyd, I wonder if you could read the details of the petition.
Thank you, Chair. The wording of the petition is, this petition is signed by the residents in Palm Street, Thomastown. We acknowledge that there will be planting of the tree species Pyrus calerona, hope I've got that roughly right, in our street. Council communication in a letter dated the 3rd of February 2022 indicates that some selected existing trees will remain. Clarification is sought and has been confirmed that the 5 mature paperbark trees in the street will not be removed. This petition is to communicate that we want the tree of choice to replace all current trees in the street, including the 5 paperbark trees.
Thank you, Mr Lloyd. Administrator Eddy, do you have any questions in relation to this petition?
No, I assume this will come back to us for further consideration, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I'm actually happy to move to resolve that Council note the petition from 15 residents requesting Council to remove 5 street trees from Palm Street, Thomastown, and replace these trees with ornamental pear trees, Pyrus calerana aristocrat, and write to the signatories to inform them that, firstly, the 5 existing trees will be assessed by an independent arboricultural consultant to validate the tree's health and useful life expectancy. And once the assessment has been completed, a report will be presented to the scheduled council meeting being held on the 11th of April 2022. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'll now put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We're now moving through to general business and we'll be working through the agenda starting with item 5.2.1, joint letter parking management, English Street, Donnybrook. And if I could ask our Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Debbie Wood, to introduce this particular item.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd like to introduce Fiona Henningson, our Acting Manager of Urban Design and Transport, who will talk through the report.
Thank you, Ms Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Wood. So at the Council meeting held on the 6th of December 2021, Council resolved to receive a joint letter from 11 residents of 10 dwellings at 82 to 100 English Street in Donnybrook and requested a report on the matter. The joint letter requested that Council provide formal parking bays in front of the residents' properties on English Street and pathways from those parking bays to the existing footpath that runs along the front of the properties. In support of their request, the residents listed the following concerns: that insufficient parking in front of their properties was causing visitors to park on the nature strip, damaging grass and leaving it muddy, which could cause people to fall. And also that the state of the nature strip could impede emergency services access. Council officers have investigated these concerns and found that there is adequate on-street parking available adjacent to the English Street dwellings on both Errol Way and Swanley Street. Currently, the 10 parking spaces available on English Street provide additional parking opportunities to those residents. If formal parking bays, as requested, are installed at an approximate cost of $100,000, they would need to be removed in the future for widening of English Street, as they would be located within the area set aside for that widening. So unfortunately, it would not be possible to relocate them at that time due to the location of underground services. In addition, the proposed paths linking the carriageway to the existing footpath are not needed in urban residential areas. And this is because the existing nature strip meets the requirements of the Disability Discrimination Act and supports pedestrians and emergency officials to walk across as required. So on to the recommendation in the report. So in response to a joint letter from 11 residents of 82 to 100 English Street in Donnybrook requesting additional parking bays and footpath links outside their properties, that Council decline the request due to the area already having adequate car parking and footpaths that meet the required standards. Also that we advise the head petitioner and petitioners of the outcome of the resolution to decline the request as outlined in the submitted joint letter.
Thank you, Ms Henningsen. Administrator Eddy, do you have any questions in relation to this item?
I do, thank you, Chair. Ms Henningsen, you talk about adequate parking availability. I wonder if you could talk a little more about how you define what is adequate in an area such as this?
I believe that is one car parking space on street per dwelling.
And in this particular case, there's more than that availability there, correct?
I might just pass on to Michael, who might be able to answer that question for you.
Sure.
Just come up to the microphone because it's being streamed. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. There are 10 on-street parking spaces in Errol Way and in Swanley Street, so that's one per residential dwelling. There are also not formalised parking bays already on English Street. If people park on the carriageway there, they will leave adequate room between the vehicles and the centre median strip opposite, 3+ metres. So whilst those parking bays aren't formally marked, they are on-street parking opportunities, but they will be lost in the future when English Street is widened.
Thank you. That leads to my next question, and thank you for that clarification. My next question was around that future widening. It's a two-part question, really. What is the time horizon for that to occur, and would the petitioners be aware that that is likely to occur in the future?
We don't have a time horizon as per yet because it depends on the timing of the development. So we can't specifically say, but it will be 15 years plus that time horizon is, we understand. And the residents, are they aware of the...
I'm not aware that if the residents are aware, it hasn't been discussed with the residents, or in this case the petitioners or the people who've signed the joint letter.
Right.
The extension of the road would be set out in our development plans.
Right, yes, I understand that. So it's in development plans or precinct structure plans, but you would not expect that the average resident would be aware of those future plans unless they've got a cause to go looking, obviously. And the only other point I wanted to just briefly explore, we've had similar items before where there have been double garages on properties, and we've had reason to believe that those garages weren't being used for storage of vehicles, they were being used for other storage purposes. Do we have any sense of whether these garages are being used for that purpose at this point?
We have no evidence either way.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I've also got several questions in relation to this item. The residents have raised a number of issues. Yes, please take a seat. Residents have raised a number of issues in their joint letter, including their concerns that visitors' car parks don't leave enough safe space for cars to drive safely down English Street. Have we got any record of incidents that we're aware of where there has been a conflict in that respect?
We don't have any evidence of any conflicts, and the street actually allows for a car to be parked and another car to pass. So we believe that there is enough room for that to happen in this street.
Thank you. And also the residents have raised a number of concerns in relation to emergency services. So they note in their joint letter that emergency services vehicles might be impeded with the existing parking arrangements, and they actually note that there might be some difficulties for emergency services carrying equipment across muddy nature strips and entering new homes with mud. Again, are we aware of any incidents in relation to emergency services in this respect?
We haven't had any contact from emergency services making us aware of those situations.
Thank you, Ms Wood. And I've just got one final question. The notion that residents have suggested whereby we could create footpath links across grassed nature strips, to me that suggested that there might be a potential conflict between sort of pedestrians and vehicles. Could you comment on that?
It's not general practice to have footpaths that lead from the street into a foot, because if you look, there's actually a footpath adjacent to the residents. We don't usually have footpaths that cross nature strips. It's just not a general way that we do it. If people park there, they generally just cross across their nature strip.
Okay, thank you. You might like, I don't think there, oh sorry, there is one further question.
Sorry Chair, there is, if I may. I believe I read in the report there was an estimated cost of $100,000 to provide the 10 parking bays being requested. Are you able to give an indication of how many other streets in our city would be in exactly the same circumstances as this? Would it be many?
I'll pass to Michael for that one, I think.
Thank you. There will be many, many streets throughout the metropolitan area of Whittlesea and of course the broader Melbourne metropolitan area. And I can never say we haven't got those in any situations, but I cannot think of any in Whittlesea at present.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.1?
I guess I could move it, Madam Chair. I don't see anyone else here other than you.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy, and I'm happy to second the particular item. Would you like to speak to the matter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the recommendation that I've moved is to decline the request due to adequate car parking and footpaths meeting required standards. I think the precedent that would be set here is important to note. I don't think this is anything special. I'm sympathetic to the residents' query, understand why they're asking for this, but there's a range of issues here that I think have been adequately responded to by our officers with sensible and logical responses. As I say, if we were to accept this request, I think the precedent it sets doesn't bear thinking about in terms of the additional requests that would come and the cost to ratepayers to accede to those. So I really don't think we have much choice here but to accept the recommendation and to, as it's recommended, advise the head petitioner and the petitioners of the outcome of those resolutions. And I hope there would be a conversation explaining the many valid reasons behind reaching this point. So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'm also very satisfied with the officer recommendations. We've had a comprehensive briefing on this particular matter, plus the further responses to our questions. So I'm also supportive of the officer recommendations. And on that note, I will put the item to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Item 5.3.1, proposed Whittlesea Business Network. And Mr Lloyd, if I could ask you to introduce this particular item.
Thank you, Chair. So speaking to this item will be a Unit Manager of Business Engagement and Support, Michelle Isherwood, and Senior Business Engagement Officer, Craig Emerson. And Craig will take us through a quick presentation.
Thank you, Mr Lloyd.
Thank you and good evening. The proposed City of Whittlesea Business Network is Council's commitment to further its relationship with the business community and help to deliver a strong local economy. The network was highlighted in last year's investment attraction plan and the recently endorsed strong local economy strategy as a key deliverable for Council and the Economic Development Department. The City of Whittlesea is home to over 17,000 businesses, and these represent a wide variety of industry types and business sizes. Many of you whom provide great service and products to our community and importantly offer local employment to our local residents. The network will be open to all businesses located within the City of Whittlesea with a valid ABN. This initiative will provide benefits for members, including engagement opportunities with council and fellow business industry sectors, and to establish and strengthen relationships across business-to-business engagement. This is expected to help businesses grow and prosper within the City of Whittlesea. And a key point is for one member of the business network to be a member and sit on the Council's Business Advisory Panel, which was established in October 2021. So today we're seeking Council's endorsement of the City of Whittlesea Business Network, the terms and conditions, and for the commencement for the promotion of the network to potential members and applications via engagement with our local business community.
Thank you, Mr Emerson. I wonder whether I might ask an initial question in relation to this item. I really strongly support the notion that one member of the new Whittlesea Business Network would also be sitting on the Business Advisory Panel, and Administrator Eddie and myself are members of that particular panel following an expression of interest process. I just wonder whether you could talk a little bit about the logistics of appointing that one person. And I know in the report it indicates that the Business Advisory Panel would be responsible for selecting that person, but I could imagine that there'd be many businesses and individuals interested in being that representative on the Business Advisory Panel. Are we going to have very clear criteria and guidelines or skill-based assessment? What would be that process?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. We're hoping it would be of interest to the businesses signing up, and we'd hope many would want to be part of it. So the Business Advisory Panel, which I mentioned, formed in 2021, is predominantly made up of large businesses within the City of Whittlesea, so some of our biggest employers, and from a range of industry sectors. We haven't established exactly how the selection will take place, but the business application at the time for the network, they would be expected to express an interest in becoming a member of the Business Advisory Panel. But one of the key things that we're looking for is to have that small business representation as part of the Business Advisory Panel. As I said, at the moment it's predominantly large business, so we're really looking for that small business voice to be on the panel to represent small business from the City of Whittlesea. But the actual sort of the process it hasn't actually been finalised at this stage.
Okay, thank you. So I take it that in fact those the expression of interest process will clearly define some specific guidelines and criteria to assist the Business Advisory Panel in their selection.
Yes, it would, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Emerson. Mr Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of questions. I think this is a terrific initiative. We talk about the network receiving a range of things like events, mentoring, etc., and training. Can you give me an example of the type of training that might be provided?
Yeah, so it would be topical depending on what's happening in the world at the time. Obviously, the past 2 years would have been a very obvious subject, but moving forward, we would highlight at the start of every financial year particular industries that we would focus on from an engagement, education and training point of view, whether or not that be retail or manufacturing or education. What our members were telling us, very much sort of that feedback from the membership base. So there are opportunities at the moment that Council have previously offered to businesses through mentoring. But yeah, we're currently exploring all the different avenues of improving businesses and their workforce from a training point of view. Again, the final details are still to be finalised, but yeah, it's building on what we currently offer from an economic development point of view.
Okay. I see that the aim is for the group to eventually become self-sufficient, which I think is a worthy aim. Why 4 years? Is there some science behind that period of time that the council would run it?
No formal science, but 4 years was highlighted in the planning stage to this point as a really good sort of time frame to really test rather than saying we're going to do it for 1 year and see what that looks like, but running it up until 2026, where we can give it a real good sort of opportunity to be successful. And 4 years was identified as an opportunity to see us through to beyond council elections in coming years.
So would it be conceivable that if the group had the necessary skills and ability that it could move to self-sufficiency earlier than that?
That hasn't been discussed, but it's potentially something that we would consider.
So that wouldn't be precluded?
No, I would say the decision would be taken on what was beneficial for the membership base, and if the membership base would benefit from an external or another party actually running it, then that would be the aim, basically. So we would run it with the best intentions of the membership base.
Thank you. No more questions, Chair.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation, but with a further part 3, and I'm hoping it's going to be projected, and that is to receive a further council report 12 months from the establishment of the Whittlesea Business Network in relation to the outcomes of the network, its terms of reference and membership, which is up there in red.
Not good for the neck.
No. Do I have a seconder for the officer recommendation and my additional part 3?
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. In moving this item, I really want to applaud our council officers for this initiative. I think we've been on record as saying that economic development, local employment and jobs are really important to the City of Whittlesea, more so than ever post-pandemic. And this is another initiative to strengthen and support businesses within the city. And what I really like about this proposal is that this time it is also irrespective of the scale of the business, and the only criteria is in fact that the business has an ABN. So I really applaud it. Mr Emerson has been very clear in outlining some of the benefits of this particular network, which are really those wonderful opportunities to network for additional professional development, to link into council more effectively, and even some local procurement opportunities, and just that sort of cross-fertilisation across businesses, which I think is just so important. The reason for that extra part 3, from my perspective, is I just think it's really good for us to have a formal review after the 12 months, not just of in relation to the terms of reference, but also what have been some of the outcomes associated with the establishment phase. Do we need to adjust anything? So I'd like to see that formal report back at council, but I really applaud the endeavours of council officers, and I think what is very clear from the draft budget that we'll be considering later in the evening is in fact the significant increase in potential funding in the economic development area to support businesses and support our own economic development team. So thank you. Administrator Eddy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support those comments. I support the initiative. I think it's a good thing to be doing, and I hope that there will be some strong interest from the business community to be part of the network. I think the idea of a status report or a progress report in 12 months is good, and I would hope or ask that perhaps as part of that there's some assessment of that progress towards self-sufficiency so that that can be monitored on an ongoing basis, because I think we'd all agree the best thing would be for it to reach that point as soon as possible so that it can control its own destiny, albeit being auspiced and encouraged by the council. So good initiative. Hope it's a success. Happy to second.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5.5.1, construction of HRUN Recreation Reserve Pavilion and Car Park Redevelopment Contract 2021-91 Tender Evaluation Report. And again, Ms Wood, if I could ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to introduce Nick Mazzarella, my Manager of Capital Delivery, who will outline the report and the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. This report seeks council approval to award a contract for the redevelopment of the pavilion and car park at the HRUN Recreation Reserve in Thomastown. The existing pavilion does not have a dedicated community social space, and the car park is in need of improved circulation and additional capacity. The proposed scope of work includes the construction of a new community building beside the existing pavilion, which will include a kiosk, a community social space, public toilets and community store. In addition, the existing car park will be reconfigured and extended. A number of sustainable design features have been included in the project, including solar PV on the new building to reduce energy costs, a rainwater tank for toilet flushing, and treatment of drainage runoff from the car park to improve water quality. Tenders were publicly advertised and 3 submissions were received. These tenders were evaluated and scored in accordance with the approved tender probity and evaluation plan. The tender evaluation panel recommends that the tender from JR and BL Kendall Proprietary Limited for the amount of $2,288,092 be accepted, as this tender was the highest ranked and best value overall. The works are planned to commence in the next month and be completed in mid-2023. This project is funded from Council's Capital Works program over 2 financial years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mazzarella. Questions, Mr Eddy?
Yes, Chair. I'm mindful of a question we had from the gallery this evening about just this type of challenge, growing sporting needs, facilities that no longer meet the needs of the users, etc. How long has this particular project been on our wish list, Mr Mazzarella? Has it been some time in coming to fruition?
To my knowledge, Administrator Eddy, I think it's been about 4 or 5 years. We have been in a design phase for the last 18 months, and there are 2 components to this actual project. There's the pitch redevelopment, the east pitch redevelopment into a synthetic pitch, which is currently underway, and this component is to do with the actual pavilion and car park upgrade. So overall, probably about 4 or 5 years in our capital program, a good part of that being in the planning design function, and now we're starting the construction phase for the pavilion extension and the car park redevelopments.
Thank you.
I've got no further questions. Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.5.1?
I'm happy to move that, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy, and I'm happy to second the officer recommendations. Mr Eddy, would you like to speak to the item?
Oh, just very briefly, as we've heard, this has been in the works for quite some time, and I think you could probably replicate this problem, this challenge, in a number of locations around the municipality, and people may get a sense of the size of the issue as sporting needs grow, and obviously we want to encourage that. We want to provide the best facilities that we possibly can. This is a case where the facilities clearly have outgrown the need of the users, and it's not a cheap thing to do. Clearly, as you can see, this is over a $4.2 million investment in total. So these are significant projects that have been in the works for quite some time. So I'm sure it'll be a very exciting news for Leila United Sloga Football Club that this project is getting off the ground. So moved.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I just wanted to make a couple of additional comments, and firstly, that Leila United Sloga Football Club has got more than 250 members. And I feel personally really excited to see the club thrive and perhaps grow even further associated with the improved facilities. And I just also wanted to comment on all of the sustainability initiatives we're seeing across so many of our infrastructure projects the inclusion of really important sustainability initiatives, which are also of benefit back to the users from the, obviously, not just from a climate change and environmental perspective, but they reap some of the net benefits from also the provision of water reuse and solar initiatives. So I do commend that aspect of the tender. So on that note, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mazzarella. Item 5.5.2, Proposed Community Action Plan 2022-2023. And if I could ask our Executive Manager, Governance and Strategy, Mr. Joyce, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Mr. Robert Kifton, who is the Unit Manager, Corporate Planning and Improvement, to provide a brief overview of the report and the officer recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Now, the proposed Community Plan Action Plan 2022-2023 is part of the City of Whittlesea's organisational planning framework. We've got the Community Vision Whittlesea 2040 Place for All at the pinnacle of that. That influences all the work that we do. And we've got the medium-term strategic roadmap, which is the Community Plan 2021 to 2025. And that really outlines sort of what we're committing to in the medium term. Now, the proposed Community Plan Action Plan is sort of the delivery commitments that Council is looking towards for the 22-23 financial year. It currently includes 125 proposals across all 5 goals of the Community Plan. We have roughly 40 million of the budget that are reflected in the proposed action plan, and key items that are included in there relate to the infrastructure investment, to key changes towards service delivery, key partnerships, advocacy items, and key projects that Council is looking towards committing to. From a content perspective, in the infrastructure space, we've got the Quarry Hills Regional Park and the Aboriginal Gathering Place that play a key role there. We've got the Wollert Community Centre. We've got the design and advocacy work with regards to the Regional Sports and Aquatics Centre. In the services space, we're looking at the rollout of the glass recycling bin collection service. That's a real game changer and a big step in that space. We are looking at the service delivery out of the new Murner facility for social support. And we're looking at changes towards online applications in the local law space. In the advocacy space, key priorities include transport with regards to road infrastructure, public transport infrastructure, active travel infrastructure, as well as our employment precincts and mental health services and improved access to those. Now, I would like to put forward the officer recommendation as stated in the report, in particular for the Council to consider endorsing the proposed Community Plan Action Plan 2022-2023. The proposed for community consultation, the proposed timeline for the community consultation is from the 30th of March to the 26th of April. Community members will have the opportunity to review the plan, which will be published on the website, and provide a written submission via the website as well. We can also send out hard copies. They will be on display as well at various venues, so plenty of opportunity to engage around that. It is also recommended that an advisory committee of council is going to be established to hear any or to consider any written submissions with regards to the proposed action plan, and in particular to hear anyone who would like to talk in person to any of those submissions. The final plan is proposed to get adopted at the council meeting on the 27th of June, and that is subject to any recommendations from the advisory committee and that will be considered at that meeting. Thank you for considering the proposed community plan action plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kisgan. Mr. Eddy, any questions? I've got no questions either. So do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.5.2? Mr. Eddy.
So moved.
And I'm happy to second the officer recommendations. Mr. Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. The only reason I didn't have any questions is Mr. Christian did such a terrific job of outlining what this issue is about and its importance and what it contains. This is a key document that goes together with the budget that we'll be considering very soon as well. As we've heard, 125 actions for the next financial year, representing $40 million of our proposed annual budget. And these are particularly targeted at delivering on the community plan through those various areas that Mr. Christian outlined. 38.3 million of that on capital works, 1.6 million on operational expenditure, and we're relying on $6.6 million from external grants. The remainder, I think it's important to say, is sourced by council through rates, fees and charges and other income sources. So this is really where the rubber hits the road, folks, and there's some really important but also exciting actions that are going to be delivered over the next year. So really look forward to seeing how the community responds to this very detailed action plan.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy, and I'm also very, very supportive of this action plan for a number of reasons. Firstly, this is obviously not the first time that we're considering the action plan. We've had a number of opportunities to feed into the development of the action plan, and we're appreciative of the opportunity to do so. It is going to guide our activities over the next 12 months, and we'll be publicly reporting against that action plan, and it contains $1.622 million of new initiatives. And I think the other key element of importance is that in fact it has been developed already following very extensive community consultation. And the report outlines clearly that more than 1,500 people and 26 community organisations have already fed into the development of the action plan over the past year. Now is the time for further feedback on the action plan, but it has actually been developed through a process of consultation already. And in fact, I note that a number of the items on which we were consulting this afternoon, such as the Green Wedge Management Plan, our animal management approaches, waste management and our community leadership program, are all key actions embedded in that action plan. I just also wanted to note from my perspective, I think it's a terrific plan because it's clear, it's in really plain English, it groups all of the key actions under the 5 key goals, which are our 2040 goals, and it also embeds within it our really key advocacy priorities in the lead up to the state and federal elections. So again, it's just that encouragement for the further feedback from community members, and it was indicated that the budget, the draft budget and the draft community plan action plan will be presented jointly for adoption at the council meeting on the 27th. So thank you, Mr. Kisgan, to you and your team for all of the efforts in pulling together the action plan, and I strongly support it. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5.5.3, appointment of independent member to the Audit and Risk Committee. And again, Mr. Joyce, if I could ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. So the Audit and Risk Committee is an independent advisory committee of Council, and its role is to report to Council and provide appropriate advice and recommendations on financial and non-financial matters, including compliance with legislation, regulations, risk and audit. There are 4 independent members, as well as Administrators Eddy and Administrator Wilson on the committee. And Teresa Glab, who has been an independent member for the last 4.5 years, has notified that she intends to cease her membership at June 30 this year. Ms Glab has provided excellent risk, governance and compliance oversight and advice during her term on the committee. Late last year, Council undertook a recruitment process for some new independent members, and at that time it was identified that Dr Marco Bini was a preferred independent member should a vacancy arise in the short term. Dr Bini has had extensive experience in legal practice, policy, legislation, audit and public sector administration. So it's recommended in the report, the officer recommendation is that Council appoint Dr Marco Bini as independent member to the City of Whittlesea's Audit and Risk Committee, commencing 1st of July 2022 for a 3-year term, ending 30th of June 2025, in accordance with the terms of reference contained in the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. And secondly, to write to Ms Glab to thank her for her service to the Audit and Risk Committee and Council.
Thank you, Mr Joyce. Mr Eddy, do you have any questions of Mr Joyce?
No, Chair.
No, I have no questions either, but I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.5.3. And do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. In moving this item, I just wanted to initially acknowledge the enormous contribution of our exiting independent member on the Audit Committee, and to formally make a few comments. We will be writing to her to express our appreciation for the contribution that she's made over a number of years. But just to note that she has been an independent member of the Audit and Risk Committee since November 2017 for an initial 3-year term, and that was then further extended by a further 2-year term. And we've certainly benefited. I can comment about the time since I've been on the Audit and Risk Committee. Ms Glab has got tremendous skills and experience in relation to risk-based good governance and compliance, as well as a really practical approach in her provision of feedback on risk and audit matters. And so she's really made an enormous contribution over the time that she's served on the Audit and Risk Committee. And she was also on the Audit and Risk Committee during a period of really significant governance changes at the City of Whittlesea with the introduction of administrators and change of CEOs. So we certainly wish Ms Glab all the best for her future endeavours and acknowledge her contribution. And then I would like to also just note that we really welcome our new independent member onto the Audit Committee, Dr Marco Bini. As Mr Joyce indicated, we went through a very rigorous process of recruitment through an expression of interest process for the independent members. And I was involved in that process alongside the CEO and the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. We had a really very good calibre of expressions of interest, but I'm delighted that we will be appointing Dr Marco Bini. As Mr Joyce indicated, he's got complementary skills, given in fact his legal background relative to the other members on the Audit and Risk Committee, and he is already on a number of audit committees, including another local government audit committee. So we're really welcoming of his contribution going forward to audit and risk at the City of Whittlesea. Mr Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo your comments about Ms Glab and to wish her all the best, and to welcome Dr Bini, and I look forward to meeting him and enjoying his contribution to the Audit and Risk Committee in the future.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 5.5.4, unconfirmed minutes of Audit and Risk Committee meeting. Again, Mr Joyce, if you'd like to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. So the Audit and Risk Committee is required to meet at least 4 times per year under their terms of reference and charter, and the minutes of the committee meetings are required to be presented to Council each quarter. So the Audit and Risk Committee last met on the 24th of February 2022 and considered a number of reports at the meeting, including reports on the corporate performance, the local government performance reporting framework, risk management updates and internal audit updates. So the officer recommendation is that Council note the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 24th of February 2022.
Thank you, Mr Joyce. Administrator Eddie, do you have any questions of Mr Joyce?
No, Chair.
I have neither. Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.5.4? Thank you, Mr Eddie, and I'm happy to second the item. Mr Eddie.
I'll very briefly, Chair. The minutes speak for themselves. There were some important items on that last Audit and Risk Committee meeting. It feels like so long ago, but it was in fact only just over a month ago, I think. Some of those items included the Local Government Performance Reporting Framework Performance Report, which updates on how we're tracking against those metrics that apply to all councils around the state. We did have an internal audit report on, I think they're called portable and attractive assets, which was interesting reading. I think the key point that I'm always pleased to see is the contribution the independent members make in interrogating that material and asking some really useful and incisive questions that are adding value to the risk assurance process for the Council. So happy to move this, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I've got nothing further to add, so I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5.5.5, Proposed Annual Budget 2022-23, and if I could ask the Interim Director, Corporate and Shared Services, Ms Marilyn Kearney, to come forward and provide an overview of this particular report.
Thank you, Chair. If I can also introduce the Acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr Aaron Gerard, who's with me, and will assist with if there's any questions later.
Thank you.
The proposed budget included in Attachment 1 of tonight's agenda papers has been prepared on the principles of responsible financial management and supports the needs of our community in the short term, whilst maintaining our long-term financial sustainability. Development of the proposed budget focused on the delivery of services to meet the needs of a growing community, whilst improving the organisation's efficiency and business processes. Population growth is projected to increase in the City of Whittlesea by 32% by 2030, with the addition of 8,000 plus new residents each year. The proposed rate increase of 1.75% is in line with the rate cap set by the state government and provides for a responsible mix of services and capital works. The proposed 22-23 budget includes operating revenue of $256.69 million, excluding developer contributions, non-monetary assets and non-recurrent capital grants. Operating expenditure of $244.18 million. In 2022-23, Council is budgeting for a full-year operating surplus of $142 million, which seems a very large number. Excuse me. In reality, the majority of this is in the form of contributions received from developers which either don't equate to cash or represent cash that is restricted for future use and therefore is not at Council's discretion in how it is spent. Council's 22-23 cash surplus is projected to be $15.19 million, which is proposed to be transferred into a newly created Regional Sports and Aquatic Fund to help fund the delivery of the new state-of-the-art recreational centre to continue to support the City of Whittlesea community to lead healthy and active lifestyles. The capital works component of the proposed budget delivers a focused $51.57 million capital program that reflects the ongoing challenges to the supply and availability of labour and materials as a result of the pandemic, and invests in planning for shovel-ready projects to maximise our opportunities for grant funding in future years. This budget will be enhanced by a further $20 million carry forward from the current year as projected, providing a total of $71.57 million for capital works in 22-23. The capital budget includes a number of projects to build and upgrade community centres, sporting facilities, playgrounds, roads, bike paths and footpaths across our new and established areas. Highlights include $11.96 million for local roads restoration and resurfacing works, the upgrade of parks and open spaces, including Kellingnack Reserve, Redleap Reserve and Whittlesea Public Gardens, which will include a skate park, rock climbing wall, basketball courts, a barbecue and shelter area, along with a car park. The delivery of actions from the Investment Attraction Plan and Strong Local Economy Strategy, an increase in kindergarten spaces to meet the needs of our growing population, the design of the Aboriginal gathering place and implementation of the Rethinking Waste Plan, including the provision of glass bin recycling service, which will be rolled out in 22-23. Increasing our tree canopy cover as part of the Greening Whittlesea strategy, completing the Mill Park Basketball Stadium redevelopment and the Mernda Social Support Centre, constructing a basketball court, shelter and social gathering spaces, and upgrading paths at the western end of Norris Bank Reserve. Design projects will include the Norris Bank tennis courts and the redevelopment of the Patterson Drive Community Centre and Kindergarten in Donnybrook. This is not an exhaustive list, but highlights the strategic commitment of the budget to deliver infrastructure and services to meet the continued growth across the municipality. We are also investing in our resources to deliver services. This budget marks the start of a strategic investment in staffing resources to keep pace with our growth in population and development. We have strategically increased resourcing into areas to support delivery of our community plan, to meet the requirements of the Local Government Act 2020 and the changing service delivery environment across all tiers of government. The City of Whittlesea has been and continues to significantly subsidise the cost of waste provision to ratepayers. The cost of providing waste services continues to increase each year due to various factors, including the Victorian Government's landfill levy and the requirement to transition to a 4-bin collection system in line with the Victorian Government's Recycling Victoria strategy. Council will continue to subsidise the cost of waste services for the next 4 years, increasing its waste charge by 13.8% or $15.80 each year until we achieve full cost recovery. The City of Whittlesea's waste charges remain significantly less than other Victorian councils who are facing similar challenges. Next steps. Subject to Council's endorsement tonight, community consultation for the proposed budget will commence Wednesday the 30th of March, allowing public comments and submissions to be received up until 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 26th of April. We will initiate community conversation through digital and traditional media, and we will provide people with the opportunity to have their say on the draft budget and proposed community plan actions online via our Engage Whittlesea platform, and at a series of in-person pop-ups across the municipality. Respondents will also have the option to speak to their submission in person at a Budget Submissions Advisory Committee of Council meeting. It is proposed that the final budget will be adopted by Council at a Council meeting to be held on Monday the 27th of June 2022, following the consideration of any submissions by Council. Madam Chair, the recommendation of council officers is in 6 parts, and I'm not sure if you want me to read those out. You don't need that. Make particular point of item 4, which requires the establishment of a budget advisory committee of council comprising of administrators for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Kearney. Mr Eddy, have you got any questions of Ms Kearney?
Just one, perhaps. I just note that the exhibition period starts at the end of March and runs through 26 April, and that includes the Easter period. Are we confident that that gives the community sufficient time to digest this material and get their responses back to us, would be my question.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. We do believe it is sufficient. However, officers will be working on posting the budget as soon as possible, so there may in fact even be additional days available to the community, and if that is the case, we'll certainly broadcast that via our media channels so that they're aware of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms Kearney.
So, Ms Kearney, in other words, if you can put the draft budget on public exhibition sooner than that date, we will do so.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd be delighted to move the officer recommendation for item 5.5.5, but to your point, Ms Kearney, about the names of administrators, I think it's very important that all 3 administrators are involved in the process, so I would like to move the inclusion of the names of the 3 administrators, Wilson, Duncan and Eddy, into part 4 of the officer recommendation. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I would just like to make a few comments because I think, Ms Kearney, you did a really comprehensive overview of the draft budget and the different elements within it, and I don't really want to repeat all the detail that you've provided, but also I think you've clarified again the operating surplus, which is really important to clarify that surplus and what it constitutes. So thank you for doing that. I think it's really important to note that administrators have spent many hours rigorously looking at the budget because we recognise that we've got many competing interests and demands when allocating council funds. And so we've had many discussions with council officers in relation to the different elements within the budget. And I think it's important to also note that we've very carefully scrutinised ourselves the operating costs because we've been looking alongside the Chief Executive Officer and his team further efficiencies on an ongoing basis while not jeopardising service quality or service levels. And I think we've got a really good balance there, including that we are going to be bringing back a number of services in-house, and we've also significantly reduced some costs in the area of consultancy and agency fees, which I think is really important. As you've indicated, the $295 million draft council budget is now again open for community feedback, and we really do welcome that feedback. And I just wanted to comment on a couple of key highlights from my perspective, and one is definitely the 1.75% rate increase, which is in line with the Victorian Government's annual rate cap. We had the possibility if we wanted to get a rate exemption, but we've certainly felt that it's really important to stick to the 1.75. A key focus over the next 12 months in the budget is certainly delivery on our capital projects and into the future service delivery, and also delivery on our key strategic plans, and again referencing some of the important things that we're consulting on again this evening, whether it's a green wedge management plan, rethinking waste, greening Whittlesea and so forth. I just wanted to note that in the economic development area, and I made this point earlier, We are proposing a significant injection into economic development activities to enable our local businesses and in turn our local community to thrive. We're almost doubling the previous allocation and staffing in that economic development area, and this will also enable us to deliver on our investment attraction plan and our strong local economy plan and the other initiatives, one of which we've considered earlier this evening in relation to the business network. And I think it's just important to note our unprecedented population growth. Our population is forecast to increase by 61.7% between 2020 to 2040 compared to the state's forecast of 24.9%. So we really have to make sure that we plan for that population growth and into the future. I think it's also really important to ensure that we plan and support full recovery from the pandemic, and so there is a number of initiatives within the budget which are in that area. And then finally, again, we are consulting this evening on the Community Leadership Program, but the budget includes provision in relation to the Community Leadership Program, which is really all about growing and developing the leadership skills of people within our community in the lead up to the 2024 council elections. So I'm very happy to move the officer recommendations in relation to the draft budget, and again do need to publicly recognise the enormous efforts of council staff, hours and hours of work that have gone into the preparation of the draft budget, and we do appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Mr. Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly echo all of those, especially that last comment. Between you and Ms Kearney, you've adequately, I think, described all of the key highlights of the budget, so there's probably not that much more I can say. I would like to point out, though, that the consultation on the development of this budget goes back to September of last year, and while it was in the middle of COVID lockdown, there was some pretty good engagement via online methods, 36 submissions. I can't recall how many of the initiatives raised in those submissions have actually made the cut of the budget, but I imagine if I'd made a submission, I'd be looking very keenly to see if it's in here. And of course, we encourage people to do that. And I guess it's a bit of a plug for the next cycle as well, for people to engage as early as possible in getting their ideas forward for the development of the budget at its earliest stage, because I think that gives everyone the best chance, the best opportunity to have things adequately considered and hopefully included. At this point, we're almost to the finish line, but it is a genuine consultation process now to get community feedback on what's in the budget. What has made the cut? Does it match or equal your expectations? Have we fallen short somewhere? Have we missed something obvious? It's never easy to make those last-minute adjustments, but if we need to, obviously there's that capacity to do so. So I fully encourage people to interrogate this document. Now, I know that's not easy for some, but what I do know is that council officers have worked pretty hard on making the materials accessible, and we've certainly had this discussion on many occasions. How do we present the materials so that people can access it in the easiest possible way so that they can engage with it and give us their meaningful thoughts on it. So I encourage people to do that. Look forward to seeing this come back at the end of June, end of June. The year's getting away from me. And really excited to see that we're starting to put money aside for that Regional Sports and Aquatic Fund as well, because that's a pretty big goal for this council to deliver on that need for this end of the municipality, while noting that it will be a regional facility. So I think that's enough said. Very happy to support it. Look forward to hearing community input in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you again. I note that there are no notices of motion. Administrator Eddie, do you have any items of urgent business?
No, surprisingly I don't.
And I have none either. Could I invite you, Administrator Eddie, to provide an update on key activities over the past month?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, it is a bit different to previous reports when we were sitting on Teams and Zoom meetings and hadn't really been anywhere. We've started to get out and about again, which is lovely, to actually meet people and see projects on the ground. We had the Audit and Risk Committee that we've already spoken of this evening that we had in person for I think the first time since I've been at Whittlesea, so that was certainly a good opportunity to meet with and get to know those members a little bit better. A highlight for me was our opportunity to meet with the Nillumbik Shire councillors and discuss matters of mutual interest, and hopefully there's some projects that we can be working on with our colleagues at Nillumbik in the not too distant future. Last week, up bright and early to meet with our MPs, a range of MPs, for a breakfast at which we were able to brief them on the whole range of advocacy needs and priorities that we have as a council, particularly in this year of two elections, state and federal. Should have said them the other way around because we think the federal will come first. And as recently as today, Madam Chair, I was very pleased to attend the Whittlesea Public Gardens, which, as people kept reminding me, are not in Whittlesea, they're in Thomastown, just in case I went the wrong way. I'm still learning where everything is in this municipality, and that's just such an exciting project, and it was great to see what's planned for that and to publicly acknowledge the $2 million that the state government has given us through the Growing Suburbs Fund for that project. So I feel like things are really starting to move, and it's going to be exciting times ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddie. As you note, the last month has been a period where we're much more visible and out and about because we can be, and it's been wonderful to have that sense of meeting people again, visiting and being in person. As you indicated, Mr Eddie, I also attended the Audit and Risk Committee over the last month. I attended the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Board meeting in February, and it was the last meeting as chair of the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Corporation. I'm now just an ordinary member of the board of directors because it rotates.
Never ordinary.
And that was a great privilege to be the chair of YPRL. Alongside the CEO, I attended the Interface group of councils, so it's all of the councils in the Interface group, and really important that we meet together to consider joint matters and joint advocacy. I attended the Northern Business Achievement Awards breakfast. I've spent a bit of time in Whittlesea Township over the last month because I had the pleasure of opening officially the inaugural Whittlesea Garden Expo, which was again hosted by Whittlesea Rotary on the 5th of March, and it was a great honour to be here and open that Garden Expo. I also attended the Whittlesea Monday Market on the 14th, and that was really wonderful to come along and be part of the activities on that day. Alongside Administrator Eddie, I attended the dinner with Nillumbik Council and also the business breakfast with our local members of Parliament. So we have that on a regular basis, and 5 of our local members of Parliament attended, which was really wonderful because we have an opportunity firsthand to put forward key issues of concern to the City of Whittlesea. And then last Saturday I attended the South Morang Farmers and Makers Market, and again there was consultation at that market along the same themes that were here today. And then this morning I had the great pleasure of being with Minister D'Ambrosio and the CEO of the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Corporation for the official opening of the new infrastructure works, both the forecourt and also the amazing garden at Mill Park Library. So I can encourage you to go to Mill Park Library. It's really quite something. So I've had quite a busy period, and hopefully we will be out and about even more so over the next month. Mr. Lloyd, could I now invite you to provide an update on some of the key issues and activities of note over the past month?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of events, just a reminder, our annual community festival is back this coming weekend at Prac and at the Civic Centre lawns. Big weekend, two-day event showcasing talented artists, including people like Mahalia Barnes, Jimmy Barnes' daughter, performing with her band The Soulmates. Rebel, which is a circus and music extravaganza celebrating the music of David Bowie. And a whole range of food trucks, roving entertainment, free art and craft activities. Very much a family event, so if you're available, pop along. You're definitely going to be there. In terms of our capital program, just a few updates. The courts at the Mill Park Basketball Stadium have reopened, and stage 1 of the redevelopment is expected to be completed in April, which is fantastic. The traffic lights on High Street in Thomastown near Central Avenue have been turned on, and that marks the completion of the Thomastown streetscape upgrades and improvements for the safety of pedestrians. We've kicked off the construction at the redevelopment of the Whittlesea Public Gardens, which are in Laylaw, Councillor, and that will include a new Learn to Ride area, a new play space, barbecue and picnic precinct. It's a $4 million project supported with state government funding to revitalise that much-loved and sadly neglected park, as we saw today. Also continuing to progress the work of the expansion of the skate park and the BMX track here in Whittlesea. We have experienced some delays with the construction due to COVID, but that work is now moving again, is expected to be completed in the next 3 months. And we've also today opened the inclusive outdoor learning and play space at the Carrington Children's Centre in Thomastown. Fantastic garden area there with sensory, physical and spatial preferences of children, particularly for children with autism spectrum disorder and additional special needs. Also in Whittlesea, Council has installed an electric vehicle charging station on Church Street, and that's part of the Charging the Regions project, an initiative of the Central Victorian Greenhouse Alliance. That charging station is one of only 2 in the whole of our municipality, and it uses 100% renewable energy and can charge 2 electric vehicles at the same time. And with fuel prices as they are at the moment, I think that will be in growing demand. We're also exploring opportunities to install additional electric vehicle charging stations throughout the municipality, and the City of Whittlesea actually is taking the lead with our Northern Councils group in developing a plan for the whole of the north for electric vehicles. Engagement opportunities for the next period, some of these we've touched on, but we're asking our community for their views around cat curfews and the mandatory desexing of newly registered cats. Great to see so many people outside earlier on putting their stickers on and filling out the survey. We're going to be out and about at community locations right across the municipality, starting today. We're also, as you know, now that the proposed budget has become a draft budget, that will be on display, and again there'll be pop-ups across the municipality. But for all of these engagement opportunities, there's an opportunity to fill out a quick survey online at engage.whittlesea.vic.gov.au to provide us your feedback. And in late breaking news that the administrators are not aware of, the City of Whittlesea this evening received a commendation in the Partnership Awards at the National Growth Areas Alliance for our partnership project at Olivine Place, which is fantastic news. That was a development there in partnership with the developers for a shared community facility, boutique library and a social enterprise cafe. So it's great that that exciting project has received a commendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. And can I just note that all of our verbal reports will actually be documented in the minutes. There's no confidential business, so that brings us to the end of the meeting, and therefore I declare the meeting closed. And can I thank you for your involvement this evening and participation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Well done, Madam Chair.